The Geopolitics of Afghanistan. The mountains and deserts of Afghanistan claimed both the British Empire and the Soviet Union in the past. Many historians have now added the US to the list, as Afghanistan is now America's longest ever war, longer than both World War I and World War II combined. Afghanistan has claimed a superpower every century for the past 2 centuries, and US is likely to become its 21st century victim. When US President Donald Trump announced his strategy for the Afghan war and showed he has not learned any lessons from the Soviets or the British defeats. Why does Afghanistan constantly become the battleground for empires, and why is it such a crucial piece of real estate that nations and empires have ruined themselves trying to conquer it? In this third part of Rose's series on Afghanistan, we assess the geopolitical importance of Afghanistan. A cursory glance at Afghanistan on a map shows it sits right in the middle of the Eurasian continent and is connected on all sides to strategic territories. The country sits at a unique nexus point where numerous civilizations have interacted and often fought. To the north, Afghanistan shares a 762-mile border with Central Asia. It has direct borders with the Central Asian nations of Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan. The Soviet Union invasion of Afghanistan took place through Central Asia. The collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 made Afghanistan even more important due to its direct border with the independent Central Asian states. To Afghanistan's west is a 635-mile border with Iran. Afghanistan links South Asia with the Persian Gulf and Middle East. To Afghanistan's east and south is the 1,510-mile Durand Line border with Pakistan, placing Afghanistan at the intersection of South Asia and the Middle East. Afghanistan also shares a border with China's Xinjiang province, at the end of the Wakhan corridor. Afghanistan is truly at the intersection of strategic territories, and this is why it is, by itself, a strategic territory, as it would give one access to many other regions. Geopolitics has 2 basic competing views of geography and power. One view, held by the Englishman, Halford John Mackinder, argues that control of Eurasia means the control of the world. As he put it, who rules East Europe, Russian Europe, commands the heartland. Who rules the heartland commands the world island, Eurasia. Who rules the world island commands the world. 1. This thinking dominated the British Empire's strategy and US strategy in the Cold War, as it fought to contain and strangle Russia. Another view is held by the American, Admiral Alfred Thayer Mahan, considered the greatest American geopolitical thinker. In his book The Influence of Sea Power on History, Mahan makes the counter-argument to Mackinder, arguing that control of the sea equals command of the world. History confirmed that both were right. The US today has the largest navy in the world and controls the world's sea lanes. It battled with the Soviet Union for Eurasia and views the rise of any continental power as a threat to US power. In its monograph on the geopolitics of the US, Stratfor highlighted, any threat to the United States would have to come from beyond North America. And the only type of country that could possibly dislodge the United States would be another state whose power is also continental in scope. 2. For the US, the emergence of a continental power is a threat to America's global domination, and ensuring this doesn't develop in Eurasia is a strategic US imperative. Zbigniew Brzezinski, former national security advisor and key US strategist during the Cold War, regarded the landmass of Eurasia as the center of global power. He wrote, "It is imperative that no Eurasian challenger should emerge capable of dominating Eurasia and thus also of challenging America's global preeminence." 3. Afghanistan is for the US what it was for the British Empire and the Soviet Union, a piece of real estate at the heart of Eurasia. Larry Wilkerson, Colin Powell's former advisor, had predicted, the US will be in Afghanistan for the next 50 years. Indeed, that may be the victory the empire seeks. Afghanistan is of geopolitical importance. It is a place where the US can impact China's One Belt One Road to Europe. The empire sees a need to be in Afghanistan to be well positioned for the future of the empire. Any threat to the United States would have to come from beyond North America. And the only type of country that could possibly dislodge the United States would be another state whose power is also continental in scope. 5. A team of US geologists discovered nearly $1 trillion in untapped mineral deposits in Afghanistan in 2010. But Afghanistan was already strategically important prior to that due to its proximity to the hydrocarbon reserves of both Central Asia and the Caspian Sea. The Caspian Sea is believed to possess 48 billion barrels of oil and 8.7 trillion cubic meters of gas. Both Central Asia and the Caspian were for long subsumed behind the Soviet Union. All energy surpluses were used within the Soviet territories. Moscow only developed energy fields, laid pipelines, built rigs and constructed refineries in Russia proper. This led to basins in the Caspian and Central Asia to remain underdeveloped. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, Dick Cheney, then chief executive of a major oil services company, remarked, "I cannot think of a time when we have had a region emerge as suddenly to become as strategically significant as the Caspian." 6. Since the 1990s, Washington has promoted a natural gas pipeline south through Afghanistan. The route would pass through Kandahar province. In 2007, Richard Boucher, U.S. Assistant Secretary of State, said, "One of our goals is to stabilize Afghanistan, and to link South and Central Asia so that energy can flow to the south." 7. As the Caspian and Central Asia are landlocked and lack access to international waters, transporting all the Caspian basin's fossil fuel requires pipelines. These can go through Russia or Azerbaijan and would greatly enhance Russia's political and economic control over the Central Asian republics. For the U.S., pipelines through Iran and Afghanistan would allow the U.S. both to pursue its aim of diversifying energy supply and to penetrate the world's most lucrative markets. The U.S. would not want to strengthen Iran, and so from 1995 the U.S. oil company Unocal started negotiating to build oil and gas pipelines from Turkmenistan, through Afghanistan and into Pakistani ports on the Arabian Sea. The company's scheme required a single administration in Afghanistan, which would guarantee safe passage for its goods. Soon after the Taliban took Kabul in September 1996, America quietly acquiesced in its conquest of Afghanistan. Unocal invited some of the leaders of the Taliban to Houston, where they were royally entertained. Whilst the Unocal pipeline didn't materialize as the U.S. lost patience with the Taliban and Unocal was unsure of its economic viability. Unocal's project was replaced by the TAPI, Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, gas pipeline linking the Caspian and Central Asia through Turkmenistan via Afghanistan and onto Pakistan and India. The U.S. aggressively pushed for this pipeline as for the U.S. Afghanistan is the conduit to control the hydrocarbon resources of the Caspian Sea as well their security and transit. Paul Wolfowitz, the arch neocon, highlighted in a press conference in Singapore in 2002, "It's true that our war against terrorism is a war against evil people, but it is also ultimately a battle for ideals as well as a battle of minds." 8. Whilst communism posed an existential threat to the U.S. and Russia today, remains a threat to U.S. dominance in Eurasia, Willie Klaus, the then NATO's Secretary General, confirmed that Islamic fundamentalism is at least as dangerous as communism was. He also confirmed, the alliance has placed Islam as a target for its hostility in place of the Soviet Union. 9. Successive national intelligence estimates, NIE, have recognized Islam as the #1 long-term threat to not just U.S. dominance, but to Western civilization itself. 10. Muslims uniting on Islam as a system of governance is the worst-case scenario for the U.S. and would spell disaster for global U.S. supremacy. Survey after survey in the 21st century confirms and points to the fact that the Muslims across the world view Islam to be a central role in their lives and viewpoints about the world around them, and see a central role for Islam in their governance. Numerous polls and surveys across the Muslim world, many conducted by Western institutes, confirm such issues. In probably the most comprehensive poll commissioned by the University of Maryland in 2007, conducted across 4 majority Muslim countries, Egypt, Pakistan, Morocco, and Indonesia, showed overwhelming support for the application of Sharia law in Muslim countries, unification with other countries in a pan-Islamic state, caliphate, opposition to occupation, and Western foreign policy. Iraq alongside Afghanistan are now forward bases for the U.S. to manage any demand for real change. The invasion of these countries shows the U.S. cannot trust the Muslims rulers with this task. U.S. politicians did struggle to explain to the American public why U.S. troops were involved in Afghanistan for operational perspective, but from a strategic perspective the U.S. has grand plans for Afghanistan due to the presence and position it gives the U.S. in dealing with many potential future threats. America understands it fully that despite disengaging from wars in Afghanistan itself, in the long term the country, despite being a graveyard for empires, is just too important a piece of real estate to ever give up. Both the British Empire and the Soviet Union ruined themselves with similar justifications. It remains to be seen if we are witnessing the US doing the same. Thanks for watching.